Chavre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I'm here in the Shchune, in the Rebbe Shchune, Crown Heights. I'm here for a Simcha, Baruch Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, for Simchas, and all the Yidden should have Simchas, b'toiv v'nire v'nigle. Today was a very great day, Chav Bei Shvat, the Yemei Lula Estalkas of the Rebbetzin Chaim Mushke, our Rebbetzin. And the Rebbe has said that this day is a day of great brachas. Chav Beis represents B'cha Yivarech Yisrael, the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and these 22 letters include every blessing and all blessings from the Torah. Today was also a very hard day with the return of the bodies of the Baiba's family, and we have to speak about that too and see a connection, and also with Parshas Mishpotim. It's also a great Shabbos, Shabbos Shkolim, Shabbos Mevorchim Chedesh Adar. So first we'll start, as the war started, we're starting with Tzedakah. Today let's Tzedakah Shemakarev Zagula Mashiach now. Then we'll say a prayer taken from the words of Tfilas HaDerech, V'sigmaleinu chasodim tovim, V'sishma kol tfilaseinu, Hashem should bestow upon us abundant kindness and hearken to the voice of our prayer, for you hear the prayers of all. So, in Parshas Mishpotim, one of the most famous Parshas of the Torah, that has many, many mitzvahs, and the source of many mesechtes, of Torah Shebal Peh, Bavakama, Bavabasa, Bavametzia, many of the laws of damages is discussed in this week's Parsha. And as we know, what the word Mishpotim means, civil laws. And there's much to discuss between the contrast between civil laws in the lens, in the perspective of the Torah, and the way it is in the secular law. And that's why Rashi right away says in the Pasuk, Ve'ela Mishpotim ashetosam lifneim, you meant to bring cases to a Jewish Din Torah, Jewish Bezdin, because even if they would come to the similar conclusions, because it's different over here, we're delving in the words of Hashem, or not. I'm not getting into that discussion right now. What I do want to bring out is one foundation, which brings us to the contrast, the way we look at another person, and the way if someone does not view another person in such a way, everything changes. And this is the connection between the Rebbetzin, Parshas Mishpotim, and what happened in Eretz Yisrael. And what we're going to talk about is respect. It's very late. I'm traveling, so I don't have my Sfarim with me. So we're just going to have to speak general, something that really warrants many, many lessons. But in this week's Parsha, we have the Pasuk, and it's a mitzvah lav. It says, Elikim lo yisekalel, v'nosi v'amcha lo yisoyer. You must not curse Hashem, nor may you curse a leader of your people. And from here we learn out the prohibition that you're not allowed to curse Hashem, and you're not allowed to curse a judge. You're not allowed to curse a leader or a king. That's v'nosi v'amcha lo yisoyer. So there's actually three categories. There's a category of a person. You're not allowed to curse a person. And we learned that out from another pasuk. That's a lav. You're not allowed to curse out a judge. That's another prohibition. And you're not allowed to curse out a leader, a nasi, which is Reivav Sanhedrin, or the king. So since this week's parsha talks about it, cursing a leader of your people, I want to talk about the idea of a leader, but from this it goes to every other person in general, ultimately. So, what's the basis? One of the most fundamental precepts, principles of life in Yiddishkeit is Chaviv Adam Shenivre B'Tselem. Every single person was created in the divine image of Hashem. And then there's Chav Yisrael. Jews were chosen. They were given something extra, something special, a nefesh alikis, a pintaliyid. But the point is, when I'm talking, let's say, to a secular person, and we talk about respect, morals, and ethics. So sometimes I like to ask him a simple question. Do you see the spark of God in that person? What's a spark of God? God is infinity. So the question is, when you're dealing with another person and you're conscious and you have an awareness that you're dealing with the spark of Hashem, you're dealing with infinity of life, infinity itself, because life is infinity. That's Jewish law. That's the Torah. So therefore, with every single person you encounter, you have a sense of respect. You're dealing with the spark of God. You're dealing with the Tzelem Elikim. Chaviv Adam. Every single man is precious because they have a special spark of God in them. How much can you measure the worthiness and the preciousness of a Tzelem Elikim? Obviously, it's immeasurable. So therefore, we're starting at the outset with a different perspective. So, now let's talk about respect. Number one, there's a famous saying, Derech Eretz Kodma L'Torah. There's many different interpretations to what it means, Derech Eretz Kodma L'Torah. Some people refer to it as earning a living, Derech Eretz Kodma L'Torah. Some people refer to it as certain etiquette, certain human behaviors that come before the Torah. But we're going to speak about it as Derech Eretz Kodma L'Torah. Respect comes before the Torah, which means if you don't have respect for the principles, for the values, then whatever you learn is not going to be effective. Now, this is in every single area and arena of life, in relationships, in a smooth operating society and civilization. Let's say, for example, you're in court. So we're talking about judges, we're talking about leaders, and we're talking about people. So we can talk about all these different, let's say, examples. So first of all, you're in court. The judge walks in. Everyone please rise. Here comes the judge. Why are we rising? We're rising because of his body. It doesn't make a difference if he's white, or if he's black, or if he's Asian, or if he's male, or if he's female. If the judge walks in, please rise. Why? Because we respect the position. We respect the concept. We respect the institution of law and order. We all want law and order. Once you shoot the sheriff, game over. There's going to be hefkedus. There's anarchy. So any society, any civilization that wants to have success, there has to be a sense of respect. And that's what it means. Derech Eretz Kodma L'Torah. Now I know there's a big problem when you have people of serious positions of leadership that did something wrong. But that doesn't change what I'm saying. That's a big problem. Just like if you read in the news that there was this dentist who took advantage of the patient and committed who knows what. Lewd, unspeakable acts with the patients while they were under drugs. Or if you read about another doctor that did such a thing. That means that the concept of a doctor is not something that should be respected. It means, God forbid, Hashem Yirachem, this doctor did the wrong thing. The Eibusha didn't take away. B'chira Chavshas, people have free choice. Sometimes there's a rotten apple. But if we're going to say that doctors mean nothing, then there's nobody that's ever going to become a doctor. When you have a society like during COVID, and the communities go out on the porch all over the world and give a round of applause to all the nurses, then you have a healthy society. We respect the nurses. We respect those that are in public service. And the same thing goes for members of Hatzalah. When a person who works for Hatzalah is given respect and shown appreciation for what he does, then you have people that would consider doing it. Otherwise, the whole system breaks down. And we have to talk about somebody who works in Hatzalah as somebody special. And he deserves our respect. That he puts himself volunteer 24/7 to be in the service of another person, to rescue his life. What greater service could there be? And that's all we have to appreciate in general. We say the bracha on Shabbos, a Misha Berich to all those that are oisik b'tzarchei tzibur. Usually they never get a thank you. There's always going to be complaints against them. But think for a second what they're doing. Think for a second to be ready to do it in the level of the degree of dedication and devotion that person is doing. And until then, etc. In other words, we have a community. We have the laws of building a community. We have the principles of how to have a successful community. And one of the main foundations is derech eretz, respect. And a community that doesn't know how to have that is not going to be a successful community. It cannot be. Just like you have a community, you have firefighters, of soldiers, of policemen, and everyone understands that there are people in the public service that dedicate their lives to bring benefit to others, and therefore they're held in high esteem to get the credit that they deserve and the respect, then you have a successful society. Otherwise, impossible. And that's why, even in times of the Beis HaMikdash, there's a Rav, there's a Rabbi, there's Shevet Levi, there's Kohanim. Of course, you're not allowed to curse any Jew that's alive. But at the same time, we made 2 lavim against a dayan, a judge, and 3 against a nasi. Because there's a certain system. In order to keep this system, we have to say with this person, you should show especially more derech eretz. And therefore we have all these dinim of, they say v'takum, all the halachas of Tamid Chachamim, all the halachas of, try to mix your life as many ways as possible with Tamid Chachamim. So, we see this all the time. I'm a teacher, you have students. You see a student who was brought up in a home where his mother and father educated him, say please, say thank you. You see certain children, you could tell they were brought up with a good education, with a solid education. And such a person automatically is a better vehicle, a keli, to grow and learn and develop spiritually. They have a certain level of humility and a certain level of respect. Respect for the process. Respect for the system. Now, does that mean every system is good? No. But it doesn't mean you should be from the people that talks about how we respect a Talmud Chacham and so on and so forth. In every situation, you have to ask yourself, are you from the people that are building the spirituality of a community or not? If a rabbi speaks for 12 minutes instead of 10 minutes in the shul, are you going to be from the people that are complaining? Every Tom, Dick, and Harry could complain. Are you going to be the people that even if you're bothered by it, you're not going to complain? Because you want to instill in the community and your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, that Torah is Torah, the most precious thing. Did you ever hear of somebody watching a sports game that complained that the game went on too long? I never heard of such a thing. Etc., etc., etc. So you have to be the one that sets the agenda, sets the value system of what's important and what's not important. So this is one of the main points over here. Let's talk about the idea of leaders for a second. Very briefly, the chinuch in the mitzvah of honoring your parents, brings out a point, and I'll say it very short, even though we spoke about this at other times at length. Your parents represent how you're meant to have gratitude. Gratitude to the thing that brought you into this world. So amongst physical creations, amongst planet Earth, the symbol, the concept of absolute gratitude is to parents. Because you can never give them what they gave you. They gave birth to you. And you can never give birth to your parents. So therefore, the level of gratitude that you're meant to have for your parents is unlimited. And it never ends. Now the same thing, according to Chassidus, as the Tzemach Tzedek explains the mitzvahs, Minui Melech, the idea of a king and why the rules are so severe about the obedience you're meant to have towards a king is because the king represents the symbol of absolute obedience, authority. Absolute authority on this planet Earth. That if the king tells you to do something, you must listen to the king. And if not, there's very severe repercussions and consequences. And why? And here comes the clincher, which connects all the ideas of leadership, is that, in the words of Kabbalah and Chassidus, the king is the level of Malchus, is a reflection of Malchus Datzilus. That's a divine attribute of God, Malchus Datzilus, his kingship, divine kingship. David HaMelech's soul is mushish in Malchus Datzilus. And when David HaMelech is standing over in front of you and giving you a command, that's a command. He's a conduit of Malchus Datzilus. Hashem is commanding you to do something through David HaMelech. That's the concept. And we have to have a symbol of absolute obedience to a king, which brings us to absolute obedience of Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the idea. Now, everyone knows the famous story of the Alter Rebbe when he was in prison. And when he was in prison, the Tsar heard very, very much about the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe is a phenomenal personality, a very respectable personality, a saint. And the chief of police, who had met the Alter Rebbe and recognized that he's dealing with a very great man, went to the Tsar and told the Tsar, you have to meet this person. He's an unbelievable person. So the Tsar became very, very curious, and he got himself disguised as a regular, simple clerk of the court. He came into the Alter Rebbe's cell, incognito, disguised as a clerk of the court, and then he wanted to interact, have an encounter with the Alter Rebbe and see what's going to happen. As soon as he walked into the Alter Rebbe's cell, the Alter Rebbe stood up and said the blessing that you meant to say when you see a king. So the Tsar was shocked, surprised, with disbelief. How did you why are you saying this blessing? So the Alter Rebbe said, because you're the Tsar. So he asked the Alter Rebbe, how did you know I'm the Tsar? And the Alter Rebbe said, because the saying of our sages, Malchusa da'ara ke'ein Malchusa de'rekia. Loyalship, kingship on earth is similar to the royalty and kingship of heaven. Which means that in the physical body of the Tsar, who could be a Rosh Merusha, there's a ha'ara, a reflection of a reflection of a reflection, an iota, some particle of Malchus Datzilus, Malchusa de'rekia, Hashem's kingship. There's some particle, to some degree, that's in the Tsar that the Alter Rebbe sensed. And therefore he stood up for the Tsar. I'm not comparing a Rosh Chas v'Sholem to the leader of your community in your neighborhood. I'm bringing out a point, the concept. There's a saying that the Rebbe, a Maimon Azal, that the Rebbe says in so many letters, speaking to people that are involved in different works, public office, vadakos, and different communities. And as usual, most people that are involved in this, like I said before, they always get complaints. There's no thanks involved, and it's difficult. You come home sometimes and say, I've had it, enough. And who are you going to turn to? Who are you going to vent to? The Rebbe. So many people throughout all the years in the Igros Kodesh letters of the Rebbe, there's full of these sort of, you don't see the person who wrote the letter, what they wrote. But you see from the Rebbe's response that it's a big schos, keep on doing it, you have no idea. And the Rebbe was always giving the public support to those who are in the service of others, lifting them up and saying there's nothing greater in the world, you have no idea, etc. So one of the things that the Rebbe would always mention is a Maimon Azal. It's in the Gemara, it's brought down from Rav Chanan bar Rava Omar Rav, that Rav Chanan bar Rava Omar Rav said, Afilu reish kargusa mishmaya mekamalei. Which means the idea of a leader, one with the most insignificant position of authority, even a seemingly insignificant position of authority, an appointment over irrigation. That's reish gagusa. Imagine somebody who's on the community dealing with the sewage, whatever it is, agriculture. And the point is, even an appointment over irrigation is appointed by heaven. Mishmayim Mekamalei. And the Rebbe would always write that to the person, which it's a combination of a chayv and a schus. Number one, you should know you're appointed by heaven. So it's very valuable. Your position carries responsibility, but it carries a merit, and it carries blessings. Hashem is giving you the power. You've been empowered by Hashem himself, Mishmaya. But at the same time, it's a very big responsibility. You understand? If you have a boss, and you know that this Mishmaya, Hashem himself, that means he wants to make sure that you're doing Melech HaShemayim, Masoy Matone Be'emunah. You're a faithful servant, so to speak. But it's the point that Rebbe would write it to the person. 99.9%, the emphasis was on the schus, that even though you look at yourself that you're not important, and you're being harassed by so many people, and there's no respect involved, but you should know, Mishmayim Akamilei. That means that you were appointed by heaven. So it's a very important thing you're doing, and keep on doing it, etc. So again, the truth is, this concept of derech eretz, respect for authority, and if we don't have this concept of respect for authority, and also to every single person, then there's a breakdown of civilization, a breakdown of society, completely. And we see that clearly. A home that has respect for the parents is a beautiful home. It has strong foundations, and they will see much blessings. A society, a community that they have derech eretz for the teachers, for the nurses, for the people that are in public office, so to speak, will be a community which is blessed with blessings and more blessings. And the examples of derech eretz could go on and on and on, and I think it's important that everyone should be speaking about it. Just to give an example, like ask yourself, I'm talking to myself now, do I live my life in such a way? Like just to give you an example, two of the Mishnahs of Pirkei Avos. One of the most famous Mishnahs is about Shiva Dvarim Begoylam Bechacham, the 7 habits of a wise person. And one of the things the Mishnah says is Eine Medaber Bifnei Mishu Godel Mimenu Bechachmu B'minyan. He doesn't speak before someone who is greater than him, whether in wisdom or in age. Like for example, I tell my students, when I was a kid, if I was in 9th grade and there was another student who was in 10th grade, I didn't speak because he's older than me. He's in a grade older than me. We had a certain respect for anyone who was older. I'm just giving a simple example. The Mishnah says, Eine bedaber b'fnei mishu godel mimenu b'chachma b'minyan. Everybody's ready to talk and talk and talk and talk. Maybe listen. Maybe there's someone who's sitting by the table who has more experience than you, who's lived through more than you, who might be even wiser than you. Think for a second. Press record more often. You'll end up learning much more and end up being much wiser. And this is what it means, practicing derech eretz, and this is what it means, the habits of a wise person. But this is what simple derech eretz means. There's another Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, like have a kal l'reish. What does it mean, kal l'reish? When you're sitting before the Rosh Yeshiva, the head scholar, or the leader of your community, kal means light, but it means yielding, it means flexible. It means you're in the presence of someone greater than you. Be ready to accommodate him and his plan and his will. Be ready to be molded according to what his mahalach is. Again, so it's derech eretz. Have a kal l'reish. That person's a leader. There's a reason why that person's a leader. Because he knows more the way it's supposed to be. So therefore, be kal l'reish. Be ready to follow what that person's path is, or that person's instructions are, etc. Now again and again and again, today we're living in a world, there's a lot of problems. There's some people that, you know, they don't live up to what they're meant to be. That's all true and has to be dealt with. We're not talking, but I'm going to call that the exception to the rule. We're talking about the way it's meant to be, and that's the way the rule is. And we should keep it like that. Today was Chav Bei Shvat, Yom Elul of the Rebbetzin, and one of the things about the Rebbetzin, which was so extraordinary, is that every single story of the Rebbetzin brings out the same point in a phenomenal way, extraordinary. Whichever person she encountered, she acted as a friend. A person came to the house offering tea and cake. It could be the delivery boy of the fruits, of the groceries. Anybody and everyone. And she would display affection, care and concern as a friend. How are you? Where do you come from? An interest. Tell me about yourself. Is there any way I can help you? She made every single person feel like $1 million. And everybody knew her. If she'd call up, you know, different stores that she made an order for the bakery, for the fruit store. Anybody she's dealing with, she'd always say, who's speaking? Mrs. Schneerson from President Street. So she had this amazing ability, and that's the real royalty, to make everyone feel totally at ease and comfortable. And whenever she would find out that there was any way that she could help a person, she would go out of her way to help the person and to find a way how to bring help to that person. So today was her Yom Elul Estalkos. So Yiratzmo Fenecha, the schus of the Balas, Yom Elul Estalkos, the Rebbetzin, should be Pel Yeshua's Bekerev Haaretz. She should bring down blessings to every single Yid, L'chol B'nei Yisrael, B'chol Makom Shehem, to every single Yid, whoever needs to be helped in whatever area in their life they need to be helped, and Bonei Chayim Mezeni should be helped today, immediately. B'toiv Anira V'Anigla. And this is, by the way, I forgot, I don't want to elaborate on the negative, with Hamas, Yimach Shemam, and the whole idea of the hostages. The degree of disgust we should be feeling towards those who don't respect the life, the total contrast. Everyone understands you revere a child, the innocence of babies. And the total opposite of everything we're speaking about, the Rahman al-Islam, is what happened October 7th, and what they represent, and how they destroy the spark of Hashem out of living creations and children and babies. So we have to do the opposite. Bring out, recognize, Chaviv Adam, Shenivra B'Tzelem, and especially Chaviv in Yisrael. We have to increase in our recognition and appreciation and awareness of the spark of Hashem in every single person, and act accordingly. And we act this way, as we just mentioned before, the schus of the Rebbetzin should bring blessings to all of us, and we should act accordingly. And this will bring the Gula Mitzvah Shleima, take it from Yad Mamish, Mashiach, now. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisborach, your man in Crown Heights.